Good morning to all. Once again, I would like to thank the organizers for setting up this meeting and all of you for coming to hear a talk about our country. To start, I would like to ask you a question. Have you ever imagined what your life would have been if you had bought Apple shares in 1985 or Amazon shares before 2009? And without setting such exaggerated examples, how many times have you counted in your calculators how you would have invested in that special opportunity that you stopped escaping? Today, I am in a position to say that Argentina in 2026 is one of those three great opportunities that life puts before us. And I do not say anything merely because I am the president. I imagine that you will hear this type of speech from the first leaders, but I also imagine that few present an investment case as solid as the one presented by Argentina today. A few weeks ago, we concluded our second year of government. During this first stage, we dedicated ourselves to fixing an economic disaster that we inherited, one of the worst macroeconomies in the world, with 15 points of consolidated tax deficit in times of GDP between the Treasury and the Central Bank, and inflation that escalated to 1% per day, a country risk above the 3,000 basis points, and crippling debt. We quickly turned 180 degrees and we became one of the five chosen countries in the world with a surplus, to the point that Argentina has had 2 years of tax surplus for the first time since 2008. To continue like this in this year would be the first time that Argentina has had 3 consecutive years with budget surplus in many decades. But it is even more valuable. This is the first time in approximately 100 years that Argentina is in budget surplus without a hyperinflation that liquefies the debt, without a unilateral recession, and without a unilateral rescission of contracts and property rights. That is to say, it is the first time that Argentina has a budget surplus as a result of a political decision and a sustainable political program. The budget surplus allowed us to fix the monetary collapse and inflation, which dropped to its lowest value in 8 years, generating a low country risk of about 500 basis points. We achieved all this with pure willpower, with the support of a people who decided to leave behind a long history of misery and impoverishment. Support that was revalidated in the last elections in October, where we won more than 10 points compared to Peronism at the national level, and if we take it with respect to Kirchnerism, we got 17 points of advantage. That is, while the opposition spent the last 2 years trying to sabotage our plan and agitating default posts, we persisted. We went through the storm. We met with everyone in each one of the payments that we had in front of us, and the people doubled their support to our management, which is not at all a minor detail, since our main challenge is to rebuild the word of a world-famous country for not having it. It is no coincidence that Argentina has the highest rating in the modern era. In this sense, each step we take, each deregulation, each reform, each law, each announcement, each meeting and each agreement has the ultimate goal of restoring the credibility of a country that was once supposed to be the richest and most reliable country in the world. That is why I tell you that you cannot imagine what we are going to see in the next 2 years, with winds in favor and high sails to move forward at full speed. Each of the perils that were extinguished during the first half of our mandate are now lit. We made the most important adjustment in history, something that was supposedly not possible since it is unpopular, and we did not lose support. In fact, we enlarged our distance with the other political forces. The social situation is responding very well. We have lowered poverty by 25 points, which means that around 15 million people who did not have enough before today live a little better as a result of winning the elections. We have much more institutional power in the Congress than before, consolidating ourselves as the first force in the House of Representatives. I give you a little historical context. With this Ni Congress, Peronism has lost the first minority of the House of Representatives after 37 years. In other words, 37 years. And in the Senate, the last time it had so few scams was in 1993. That is 33 years ago. Allow me to talk about a bizarre moment in the history of Argentine politics. The effect of this political change is already throwing notorious results. We no longer have the ability to approve the previous budgets, to approve the vice budget, with its tax payout in many years and in record time. In the same session, we also approved the tax innocence law, a law designed as a tax amnesty for all Argentines who are pushed to save dollars in cash under the mattresses by a voracious system designed by politics. No Argentines can deposit their savings in their bank accounts and use them for whatever they want, as it should have always been, which will contribute to lubricating even more the gears of our economy. At the same time, we gave back to people the sacred principle of innocence, which means it is an efficient measure, but mainly it is a fair measure. All this is added to all the achievements that we knew we could achieve in the past, such as the incentive regime, which gives the tax competitiveness to investments greater than $200 million, that is, the RIGI. Under this regime, investments of almost $20 billion have already been approved in key sectors, such as infrastructure, mining, siderurgy, energy, automotive, technology, oil and gas, and there are more than 50 billion more in a state of revision. We also have the tax cuts and the elimination of duties and export rights, tax cuts to different sectors of the economy, and the 13,500 deregulation and reforms that we have already carried out. And we still have a lot to do in the short term. With everything already mentioned in our favor, our next steps will be the following. We are going to turn the free trade agreement that we signed with the European Union into law at the end of last week. This will open a paying market of more than 400 million people, which represents almost 20% of the world's GDP. There are already estimates that show that our exports to the European continent will grow by 76% within the next 5 years. In addition, we are going to pass a labor reform law to provide dynamism and competitiveness to a regulated and static market, which at the end of today push 50% of workers to informality. This will strongly strengthen our small and medium-sized companies that employ 70% of Argentine workers and who have been punished for a year. A reform that also includes tax cuts. We are also going to reform the so-called ICE law to federalize environmental criteria and other different provinces can make decisions on their territory, which would dynamize the mining industry. And this is only our parliamentary agenda for the next month of February. We still have many changes to be made, but we are already at the stage of the curve in which each change made greatly multiplies its results, as does the compound interest. Following an analogy from the late Carl Menger, the first 2 years are about pushing a snowball up the hill to build its potential energy. Now, the next 2 years will be about pushing the hill down so that the snowball of Argentine growth grows every second. Just by having achieved tax equilibrium and by sustaining it over time, Argentina will achieve, according to different studies, a growth 3 to 5% per year, a growth during which, simultaneously, public spending will remain fixed in real terms. That difference with the collection will allow us to continue to lower taxes, progressively further incentivizing growth in a true virtuous circle. Because if we add to the tax equilibrium the reforms that we want to take forward, we could be talking about a growth of 7% or 8% per year in a sustained way. And this is not a number that we have invented, but it has to do with what David Ricardo explained by postulating the ideas of comparative advantages. Argentina spent a lot of time close to trade, which made it stagnate. By deregulating our economy and reopening the world, the rest of the world will earn a single commercial partner, while Argentina will be earning dozens of commercial partners. This will make us converge again at medium to high speed, as happened in the Soviet countries after the fall of the Berlin Wall and the dissolution of the Soviet Union. It would not be unreasonable to hear during the coming years of growth in Argentine rates. Such growth would imply that in 10 years we would look like countries with high incomes. In 20 years we would be among the richest countries in the world, and in 30 years we would be on the podium of the world powers. In summary, we are creating the necessary conditions for the private sector to exploit its creative capacity to the maximum without its right to property being threatened. We want Argentina to give the world its potential, a potential that was for a century suppressed by socialism and today is dying to come out to light. We invite you to join this great gesture and capitalize on the change of times in the Argentine Republic, a country in which everything will be done, which will receive you with open arms. Thank you very much to all. May God bless you. May the forces of heaven be with us, and long live freedom. Carajo.